Hey folks, and welcome to the Truck King YouTube channel. Have you bought a new vehicle in the last 2 years? Well, if you have, you probably know that it's a frustrating experience, more frustrating than ever before. So recently, we received an email from a viewer who just bought a brand new Ford Maverick. And in this video, we're gonna talk all about what his experience was like buying a new Maverick in 2022.
So this is not just a Ford story, and it's not just about the Maverick, because frankly, any vehicle that you've gone to purchase in the last 2 years, I mean, between chip shortages and supply chain issues, okay, getting your vehicle has been tough. And of course, the other story that we keep hearing a lot about is dealer markups, all these extra charges that are showing up for no reason other than plain greed. That's all there is to it. So in this particular case, the Maverick, of course, is very popular. And last winter, this is actually last winter when we did a story on the Maverick, we got a call from a guy, Philippe, and Philippe said, "Hey, I've ordered a new Maverick. I'm in the queue. I've been waiting about 8 months now. Should be here anytime." And I said, you know what, when you get it, call us, because I'd like to tell you a story. I'd like to hear what it's been like waiting that long for your vehicle. So 16 months later, that's why we're making this video right now. He finally got his truck.
So yeah, we sat down with Philippe for a little while. We did a nice interview. He told us his whole story, and now we're gonna tell it to you guys. So enjoy.
The reason we were interested in doing this is we've heard a lot of stories very similar to yours over the last, 2 years, which is to say, ordered a vehicle, got a date got moved, wasn't sure when I was going to get the vehicle. There's been a lot of question marks in the vehicle buying process these days. So when you told us sort of what you went through, we were curious to hear your story, just sort of to illustrate, what's it like to buy a car, in 2022. So if you want to just start off with, why you landed on a Maverick, and then how the buying process went.
Absolutely. So a while back, I was a tradesperson. I was basically like a carpenter, like renovator person, and I was driving a F-150, 2012 F-150. It is up for sale, FYI. And loved the truck, really liked it. But at some point, I started to move in more of a management position in another company. I was still driving my F-150, still liked having a pickup truck in general, but started to be like, well, it's empty 98% of the time. Even though it's a twin turbo EcoBoost engine, it's still a lot of gas. I'm just not using its capabilities. It would be nice if something smaller came up. And then at the same point, I started to see some rumors, people were spy-shotting it, like clearly Ford was working on something. Mm-hmm. So immediately I got interested. From what I knew from the spy shot, I was really thinking like, wow, like if this thing is what I think it is, there might be like a 50% chance I might jump on that. We'll see. And then it got revealed in June. I looked at it again, the dates, basically June 8, 2021. And basically that thing was everything I could possibly imagine, want. If I had been on the design team, I don't think this truck would have changed at all. Like it is exactly what I was looking for. And when the kind of like the cherry on top, or like a lot of cherries on top for me, was the hybrid power system. When I learned that they had a hybrid power system and it was like the base engine, I was just like running towards my car to go to the dealership to reserve one, basically. Yeah. I was like, this is perfect, this is ideal. So a little bit of back and forth with my dealer, because the one thing I wanted to do, I wanted to try the powertrain, the hybrid powertrain, and it's the same-ish powertrain, very similar to the Escape hybrid. They had an Escape hybrid on the lot, so I tried it, loved it, put a deposit down. Roughly like 7 days, a week roughly after the reveal, I looked at it up again, the dates again.
Got it.
My deposit was $500. Originally, it was for an XL, bare bone, almost bare bone model hybrid. I was told at the dealership that I was one of the first. Of course, I mean, like people were not literally running to the store, like to buy a new iPhone or something. It wasn't that crazy, but there was definitely more interest than they thought. But I was still like very much in the first batch of order at this dealership, and of course in Ford Canada in general.
Yeah.
So I was really in this initial batch. Originally, I was kind of led to believe that I'm one of the first orders. I should be one of the first made. Kind of makes sense. So I should expect my truck in October or September, and I was like, yeah, cool, that's
Of
nice.
2021.
2021, yes.
Right.
Yes, 2021. So I even bought like winter tires. They were in my basement waiting for that. October comes around. There's some more media coming out about the Maverick, and it's starting to be pretty clear at that point that they only really are making the turbo models. That seems to be pretty clear at that point. The dealership is telling me the same thing, basically that other people that ordered roughly at the same time as me, but that were turbo fours, they were getting their trucks.
Yeah.
And no hybrid were coming through. So then my expectation went way down. I was like, okay, like there's something up here, like something's not like adding up, or not that it was not adding up really, but it was more like, okay, like clearly they're struggling like to get some hybrid done. And then I'm patient. I'm a patient guy. I understand these things. Like I had a vehicle. I didn't want to I understand at the end of the day that my dealership doesn't make the vehicle. There's no point in me getting mad at anyone. It is kind of what it is. But then it just kind of like at some point it just kept going, and it just starting to make less and less sense in my head of like clearly, like, is there something more going on? Like the struggles must be like pretty significant.
Yeah.
Keeps delaying. At some point in I think January or February, basically Ford is saying we're not taking any orders anymore for this thing. That
Yeah.
was the first sign of, okay, something's wrong, something's difficult for them. But I think from Ford point of view, it is still a good problem to have. People were wanting this thing a lot, and probably
course.
way more than they expected, right? February comes in, I'm kind of again led to believe, never through email. It was always like, I would call, and I was kind of being told, February, March arrived, nothing. I also made a timeline of that because I wanted to kind of review everything. So I made like a visual timeline for it
Yeah, it's
to
great.
make
I
sure that I
appreciate
had
that.
my dates right. May keeps going. At some point in June, that's the first time, June 2022, roughly a year after, again, first batch of orders, I'm being told like it's going to be made in June. Congratulations. Amazing.
Yeah.
I have a serial number. Then that June date got moved to July. That July date got moved to August. And then finally, like finish of August, end of August, it was made. I received it. What did I write down? October 4th, which is 475 days later. And again, I was one of the firsts.
Yeah.
So, and that's why it never made sense to me at some point, because the tragic thing is you start seeing some on the street.
Of course.
Even I saw a couple hybrids, and I'm like, I pretty much know for a fact that you ordered yours after me, because there's very, very few people that ordered before me, right? So what is going on? So yeah, that's kind of how it went, basically.
Gotcha.
The overall process.
There's no doubt that this process is not transparent.
No.
Meaning that obviously Ford had production issues. Nevertheless, they're building trucks every day. So comes the question: how do they allocate? Do they as what we would expect is that if you're on the list, if you were number one on the list, you should get truck number one. However, that does not appear to be the way that it worked.
This information gap is kind of where I started to be, one of the only time I got frustrated was at some point I called, I moved from my salesperson and I moved to the sales manager. And and again, my question was, I understand there's a list. Like, I just want to know, where am I on this? Like, what are my expectations at that point? Like, there was just nothing. There was just like, yeah, you're on the list. But usually when there's a wait list, it's very helpful for everyone's temper to understand roughly where they are on that list.
Totally.
And you said like production issues, like that's one thing. And I don't want to overly blame Ford for that, in the sense that
No, that's
everyone in the
industry-wide.
world that makes anything is a nightmare. I work in the forklift industry now. Some of these lead times are absurd on some of these things, and that's understandable. But there was a lot of stacked things for the hybrid specifically, of chips missing for this, and also like more like odd things that were troublesome. Of at some point, people were saying, well, if you have this type of package, that's a trouble thing. They're not able to get that package. Some of these more advanced packages, like for example, like the Ford 360, they had trouble sourcing that. The luxury package, whatever in there, I didn't take that, but that was trouble. But even more simple things like spray bed liners was a limiting factor for production. So, and I was always, willing to compromise. And I told my salesperson, let me know what is limiting, and I can make a decision. And one of the decisions I made is I moved away from a spray bed liner, and I had it done aftermarket when we got here, which apparently might actually be a good thing, but we'll see about that. But Line-X is good. It didn't like, don't delay my truck 4 months for spread bed liner. Like that's stupid. Like, let's
And
be
that
honest
is the
here,
kind
like
of information that they should be providing.
right. And
should...
they did, but it took some like, hair pulling a little bit. And I think the real information break was not really between my dealer and I. It was between my dealer and Ford Canada or Ford US, somewhere upstream from them, because they had very limited information themselves, for sure.
Now, on the other hand, you and I were talking about the dealer experience. You told me two things that I want to touch on. One is that you actually signed a deal in June of 2021, and you were not asked for a price increase, and nobody said to you, well, we're pushing you into the next model year. So in other words, the dealer stood by their original agreement, which I thought was admirable.
Yes, and I didn't know like the whole range of the industry right now about these things. That was definitely my expectation. Like I was expecting that they would honor whatever I had signed, and they did. So the price didn't change. Even at some point, I think it was in February, I changed jobs and my needs changed a little bit, and I decided to go from an XL to an XLT. So I did change my order a little bit. Well, a little bit. It's significant, but I did change my order at some point. And already at that point, there had been mid-year a price increase already. So the XL at that point was more expensive than it was in June 2021. And they honored the price of the XL at launch date.
Nice.
So that was great. They also didn't change my, I took a loan for this vehicle. They didn't change the interest rate, which again, a year can make a big difference. In June, these interest rates were rock bottom. Now they're increasing. Like I get a letter every month from my mortgage company that interest rates are going up, right? So, and that's actually one of the critical point. And I in some ways I do feel for Ford, in the sense that at that point, if I had kept an XL at that loan rate, I don't think Ford was making any money with my truck. Like, let's be honest here, because they still have to pay like higher interest rates. So I locked like way under than whatever you can get right now, and they honored all of that. And because of this, I didn't want to make, I worked in customer service before when I was younger. There's no point of me going there and be like, I'm never coming back here. You guys are horrible, blah, blah, blah. They don't have control over this. They did what they could for me. So I'm staying with them. I have like a service agreement with them for my Ford Maverick. I'm going to use them. I appreciate the work they did, and I certainly don't put any blame on my local dealer for that.
Well, that's actually almost a good news story, despite the fact that you
Yeah.
had to wait this long.
So I'm doing all kinds of stuff with it, normal family things, and getting some plywood. One of the pictures I sent you guys, I basically loaded this thing to the max. I fill it up with 20 sheet of half inch, 3 sheets of 3-inch, 3/4 inch. At that point, it's probably 1,200 pounds or something like that.
Yeah.
It's basically up there, all strapped down, and it did it. Like, would I go all the way down to Florida with this load in there? No, but it did it, and it is as much plywood as I feel like hauling around in one day. I'll tell you that. So this is plenty for me. I tired out my wife emptying my truck, and then I had to ask my neighbor, and he was also tired at the end of it. So that's a lot of plywood. So it is plenty of capabilities.
So right now, if you were talking to, I'm going to say your dealer, but also to Ford directly, what could they have done to make that time frame easier for you?
Information. It's because when you don't have information, you start to speculate. And when you start to speculate, depending on your mood that day and your personality, I'm not someone who's like half glass. I'm not half full kind of guy. I'm half empty. I am positive. I am optimistic in general. But at some point, when you don't start to get any information, you can get like on the bad like side of things of like, was there a mistake? Like, why is other people getting mine when mine is before? You start to get like a bit negative about that. But clearly, like, Ford was struggling on multiple levels in terms of getting the parts they needed. I don't think the stuff was an issue. It was really, the stuff, right? And if you don't get this information, for me to Ford saying like, hey, like, we don't have the stuff to make your truck, it's annoying, but I cannot do anything about that. I understand that Ford doesn't want to be in this situation. Ford wants to make stuff and sell it. Like, they wish they could make all of that stuff. They're losing money with all these struggles. Like, they're not like profiting from this at all. This is costing them money. So I understand that. Like, I work in business too. Like, everyone needs to make money. Like, I get that. Like, no, there's no free lunch anywhere. But it's really the information level that was just kind of absent. And I don't know if any other manufacturer has any more transparency over that, because they are obviously, the thing is that they are obviously embarrassed by that. They don't want their competitors to know the details of the struggles they have. They're always kind of like keeping that fog of war between, like, well, they only reveal information when like they really have to, where like the pressure goes up, and the information they give is always like super massaged and pre-digested, and you don't get any real detail, because you don't want to give to your competitor information of like, oh, like, that factory is not able to make this. Like, we have to know sometimes from like satellite images that like F-150s are starting to stack up outside because they're not able to finish them because they're running out of chips.
Yeah.
So we have to like spy on them from space to get the information that they're struggling. So I am not sure how they really could. The part that really frustrated me though was more like the at the end of the process, when I'm being told there's a production date, and then that production date keeps being moved and moved and moved. And at some point I was like, guys, if you have a production date, don't you have then the certainty that you have the stuff to make it? Like, are you just gambling? Like how much of what is needed for my truck is really like at the factory? Is it in transit? Is it like stuck in a container at the port of Long Beach in LA? Like, what is their level of certainty that they're comfortable having to then say, we're gonna make this truck at that date? And like, move once, move twice, and I'm like, how does that even make sense? And I felt at that point, I felt for the poor workers, because it impacts them too. Like, they're being told, yeah, we're gonna make this truck at that date. The Maverick is made in Mexico. Like, so they expect, I'll be working that time, and then everything just kept up. It's bad for everyone. It's bad for everyone. I wish that there was more information available, but the thing is that if it's not an industry-wide thing, no one's going to be the first to go to that level of giving information, because the game theory of that doesn't make sense for them. It's just not advantageous for Ford to release all this information if GM, Chrysler, well, whatever, Dodge is not, saying anything about these things.
Well, we can hear how invested you were in your Maverick, and I'm really happy that you got it. And there's improvements that in the information pipeline need to be made for sure. On the other hand, I'll just reiterate again, I'm glad that you had a reasonably good dealership experience, because we hear a lot of bad dealer stories. So, and we want to thank you, Philip, for telling us your story, man. And we'll see you out there on the road in your Maverick.
Yeah,
I think Philippe's story is typical of what's happening with a lot of popular models these days. In his case, it was really a question of how long he had to wait. And the most frustrating thing is never getting the information that you want. You're always left with this, like, what's going on? That's the bad part. The good part is, and kudos to Philippe's dealership for not trying to push him over into the next model year, and at the same time not on the day of delivery say, by the way, this is going to cost you X number dollars more. So at least we did find one decent dealer who is not doing that.
And luckily enough, Philippe loves his truck, and you know what? The Maverick is a great little truck, so I think that's also an important part of the story. You wouldn't wait so long for a vehicle that you didn't really like. You know what though, Dad? I think that's it for this one. Now, of course, we need to hear from you guys, so please go in the comments. Like I said, do you have a similar story? Please lay it out for us below. We're always curious to hear these new car buying stories. As always, while you're down below, don't forget to hit like, hit subscribe, hit join to become a member, and then come right back here to Truck King to see what we are testing next.
Thank you.